Good evening. Welcome to Alumni Talk. Please welcome Elizabeth Yuan, Columbia College Class of 1996, and Columbia School of Journalism Class of 1998.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Columbia College Women Alumni Talk, a conversation on Black women's history and Barbie. The Alumni Talk is a virtual speaker series featuring alumni and guests who share their knowledge, insights, and wisdom with the college alumni community. And Columbia College Women's mission is to amplify the voice of alumni in the college through outreach, programming, mentorship, and development, most notably the CCW Scholarship for undergraduate students. This Saturday, my co-chair, Nicole Estilo Kaiser, and fellow CCW board member Christina Alexander will be hosting Arts Access in Mexico City with gallery tours, eats, and discussion as part of Art Week with more than 200 exhibitors from 26 countries. And next Wednesday, CCW's Vice President Akosua Ayin is hosting a virtual forum for Black women and allies, a safe space to connect with and support and obtain guidance from each other. And next month, on March 25th, CCW will have its signature event focusing on entrepreneurship. There will be a fireside chat with the founder of Tate's Bake Shop, Kathleen King, along with a rapid fire pitch contest, entrepreneur pop-ups, drinks, and eats. Now to today's event. I'm very excited by our three guest speakers. Though I have my own many questions, I've encouraged them to also ask each other questions too, and we can expect a freewheeling conversation in the next hour. We'll dedicate the final 20 to 25 minutes to audience Q&A. Please enter your question and, if relevant, graduating year in the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen anytime during the talk. Only the facilitator will see your question. We'll try to do our best to ask a question on your behalf. For optimal viewing, please enter full screen mode. We are joined by Alelia Bundles, Vice Chair Emerita of the Columbia University Board of Trustees. She is the author of On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker, a 2001 biography of her great-great-grandmother and the inspiration for the fictional Netflix series Self-Made. The 2020 edition was reissued under that name. Alelia is working on her fifth book, The Joy Goddess of Harlem, Alelia Walker and the Harlem Renaissance, about her great-grandmother, a businesswoman and arts patron. Alelia is the founder of the Madam Walker Family Archives. She is a Harvard College graduate, an alumna of Columbia Journalism School, and enjoyed a 30-year career as a producer and executive producer with ABC News and NBC News. In 2021, Forbes named her to its 50 over 50 impact list, and in 2022, Black Enterprise presented her with the Woman of Power Legacy Award. She serves on the Council of Advisors for the Women's Suffrage National Monument Foundation and on the Columbia Global Reports Advisory Board. Columbia's Alelia Bundles Community Scholars Program for Harlem residents is named in her honor. Also joining us is Dr. Crystal Moten. She is a public historian, curator, and author who specializes in African American business, labor, and women's history. At the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, she co-curated the exhibition, The Only One in the Room, Women Achievers in Business and the Cost of Success. She also co-hosted a Smithsonian podcast called Collected that uplifts the stories of African Americans and features a first season exploring Black feminism. Her forthcoming book, Continually Working, tells stories of Black working women resisting job inequality in Milwaukee from the 1940s to the 1970s, and will come out next month by Vanderbilt University Press. She received her BA in Anthropology and African and Afro-American Studies at Washington University in St. Louis, and her master's and PhD in History and African American Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Check out her self-made syllabus dedicated to Madam C.J. Walker, provided in the chat. Dr. Moten is the inaugural curator of collections and exhibitions at the Obama Presidential Center Museum in Chicago, her hometown. Given that Columbia is the alma mater of President Obama, we are so grateful that Crystal is joining us in her personal capacity. And Carlyle Nuera joins us from Mattel, where he is the lead designer for Barbie Signature. He has designed nearly all of the recent inspiring women Barbies, including Madam C.J. Walker, whom you see right here with her wonderful hair grower in her hands. Others in the Inspiring Women series include Maya Angelou and the aviator Bessie Coleman, whose doll came out 2 weeks ago on her birthday, January 26th. Carlyle also designed the tribute Barbie collection, celebrating cultural trailblazers like Vera Wang and Laverne Cox, and also chromatic couture, which go all in on a single color, specially made for international doll conventions. Carlyle's first full series was the Harlem Theater Collection, inspired by the Harlem Renaissance. And his debut doll was the Mutia Barbie, celebrating the Philippines. He is a graduate at the Otis College of Art and Design. He will share with us some of the historical, personal, and sartorial considerations that go into these Barbies. The idea for this talk began right around Labor Day, when I read an NPR article about Madam C.J. Walker being honored with her own doll by Barbie. She was a pioneer of the modern cosmetics industry and known for products like Madam C.J. Walker's wonderful hair grower in the early 20th century. She became the wealthiest Black woman of her time, had the largest Black-owned business in the United States, fought against gender and racial discrimination, and used her philanthropy to uplift African Americans. I had never learned about Madam C.J. Walker in school and didn't know of her. And here I was learning about her through Barbie. And as much as the American Women Quarters program is introducing people through coins to the actress Anna Mae Wong and the singer Celia Cruz, respectively, the first Asian American and Afro-Latina on US currency. Alelia, your book charts how your great-great-grandmother, Sarah Breedlove, a daughter of slaves, became Madam C.J. Walker. You wrote that as far as her life was concerned, reality indeed was more interesting than most fiction. Can you talk about that and also set the record straight as far as how it was depicted in the Netflix series Self-Made?
Well, first of all, Elizabeth, thank you so much. And I just want everyone to know how hard Elizabeth worked on pulling this panel together. So much thought went into it. And so I thank you for being interested. And it's always a joy for me to be with a Columbia audience and to share Madam Walker's story. So the elevator version of her life, born on a plantation in Delta, Louisiana, where her parents and older siblings had been enslaved, orphaned at 7, married at 14 to get a home of her own to escape her cruel brother-in-law, had one daughter, and when she was 20 years old, she was widowed. She moved up the river from Louisiana to St. Louis, where her brothers were barbers. Their barbershop was very near St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church, and it was the women of St. Paul who really began to give her a vision of herself. This young woman, Sarah Breedlove, is something other than an illiterate washerwoman. Fast forward, her hair began to fall out. She developed a hair care products with some ideas from her brothers, who I said were barbers, also from Annie Malone, who became her competitor later on. And then she was a master marketer who ultimately employed thousands of African-American women, helped them become economically independent and to educate their children. So now how does that sync up with the Self-Made Netflix series? Excuse me. Let me say this. Octavia Spencer was great. She lit up the screen. The Self-Made was a Hollywood version, and it was probably maybe 5% accurate. I hate to really disappoint people, but the head writer and the showrunners went in on trying to do kind of a cliched, two women fighting each other. They introduced colorism that really wasn't part of the conflict. I mean, these women were really competitors with each other, but not quite in the Real Housewives of Atlanta way that it was portrayed. I was hoping for Hidden Figures. But having said that, it does mean a lot more people know her name. And I'm looking forward to any additional questions that people may have. But it's just, first of all, really great to be here and to celebrate Barbie. And I can't wait to hear Carlyle, because we worked together from the beginning.
I have one question really quick. what I loved is how you navigated what was not known about her with what was known about the immediate world around her. For instance, the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904, commemorating the centennial of the Louisiana Purchase. I mean, such a thing that I necessarily think about. Or who her neighbors were, what sounds were likely in the air, given the speakeasy on the corner. Can you talk about navigating the knowns and the unknowns?
Sure. Well, and Elizabeth, as a fellow graduate of the J School, we know that we learned how to be storytellers, and really, my storytelling with this story, in some ways, was the catalyst was being at the J School and having a professor there, Phyllis Garland, the only Black woman on the faculty, who recognized my name, Alelia, and knew and recognized the connection to Madam Walker, and who insisted that I write my master's paper. So I really owe it to a professor. But it was really using the clues that I had, because in her early life, there was very little documentation about her life, and I had to fill it in with what was going on circumstantially in the city where she lived. And then ultimately you learn how to knit those pieces together. But as a nonfiction writer, as a journalist, I try never to go farther than I can actually document.
My computer is a little slow, I'm sorry. Crystal, can you talk about, you've written about Black entrepreneurship, especially in the Midwest, and Alelia had a really great statistic, which is really striking. Actually, I wrote on page 51 that in 1900, with decent paying employment off limits to large numbers of Black men, 26% of all married Black women in America worked, mostly as domestics or farm workers, while only 3% of married white women were employed. The barber and beauty professions cultivated a class of Black entrepreneurs. Would you be able to talk about this aspect?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for planning this wonderful discussion. Part of my answer to that question really expands on Alelia's wonderful comments around the history and the context in which Madam C.J. Walker lived. And so when you think about that history and that context, you think about the opportunities, the economic opportunities particularly, that were available for Black women during the time where she starts her business, where she grows this wonderful economic engine, right, for the communities in which she lived. And so the thought about that is that, right, as you mentioned, for most Black women, the only opportunities were limited, right, in domestic service, in personal service. And so to become a hairdresser, to become a cosmetologist, right, that did two things. One, it gave you autonomy over your labor. And two, it provided a foundation for your family and for your community in terms of wealth development and wealth growth. And so thinking about the context in which Madam C.J. Walker is living and working, and the opportunities that she provides, not only in terms of beauty and in terms of Black women being able to take care of their hair in a healthy way, but also the opportunities she provides when she creates the Madam C.J. Walker method, right? When she creates the training schools that are eventually run by Marjorie Stewart Joyner, right? Who provide opportunities for Black women to join in, right, in the wealth and the success that Madam C.J. Walker created as a personal response to a very real situation that a lot of Black women were facing. To add on to that, I think a lot about and you saw this in the chat, the self-made syllabus, but the books around the context of Madam C.J. Walker's life, which really illuminate the experiences of Black women and really bring to life what they were really up against. And so when you consider that, and you think about what Madam C.J. Walker did, who she was, and what her concerns were, it's even more phenomenal. And I agree with Alelia that it's even better than TV because it was real life. Oh, Elizabeth, you're muted.
I have a very slow computer that I'm dealing with. I'm sorry. You are involved with many things, among them AfricanAmericanMidwest.com, a website and digital documentary on Black history in the Midwest with leading Black Midwest scholars. Madam C.J. Walker's path took her from Delta, Louisiana to St. Louis, Denver, Pittsburgh, and Indianapolis before New York City. Was there something conducive about toward Black entrepreneurship, particularly among women in the Midwest?
Thank you for that question, because it gives me an opportunity to shine a light on Black Midwestern history, right? Many people think of the Midwest as flyover territory, and we think of the coast, right, as the centers or the locus of culture, of global society in some ways, or connections to a globalized society. But the Midwest for African Americans was particularly important, especially because you have many of the places you noted, but you also have Chicago and Detroit and Milwaukee and the Twin Cities, all places where thriving Black communities develop, right? And not only did these thriving Black communities develop in these areas where segregation and discrimination was still the norm, because Jim Crow was a national cancer and not a regional phenomenon, you had Black communities developing their own economic engines, their own cultural districts, their own economic districts. And so the Midwest becomes a really important place and center of Black political, economic, and social development that we have missed examining. And so when we think about Madam C.J. Walker and her influence on the Midwest, but, you know, of course she had a national influence, but particularly her influence on the Midwest, it makes us stop and think and remember, hey, right, there are Black people here, there were Black people there, and we need to tell their stories to influence, right, to contribute to a national narrative and an expansive understanding of Black folks that includes the Midwest and that it centers the contributions of people there. And so, yes, the African American Midwest project I'm working on in collaboration with a number of different scholars and professors, it's our goal to tell an expansive story of the Midwest, and we're creating a documentary to do that. So I'm really excited about that project and about the opportunity to tell more stories about Black people's lives and experiences in the Midwest.
With regard to, Tulsa, Oklahoma, would put had a bustling business district. Did these places in the Midwest also face the dangers as did, for instance, Tulsa?
Yeah, and so Tulsa is an example of, extreme white violence, right, that happened in response to a very economically successful, thriving Black business and community neighborhood, right? And so, but we don't have to think about extremes in terms of response to Black accomplishment and Black success. And so while we know of Tulsa and what happened during the Tulsa massacre, there were other responses, right, to Black accomplishment and Black success that happens again across the country in the Midwest, where we know where Black folks were, trying to create economic wealth and create economic accomplishment, and they were responded to by, certain white folks, in negative and very violent and hostile ways. And so while Tulsa is kind of an extreme example, it's not the only example that we have of Black folks' experiences in the Midwest. And again, it connects back to this idea around racism and white supremacy not being just something that happens in one part of the country, but that Black folks, although it varied what they experienced, they were experiencing and having to contend with racism and white supremacy and everywhere they went in the United States. And so their business responses, their economic responses, their social responses were in some ways responding to that. But I also don't want to set up the narrative that all of Black people's accomplishments were in response to, white violence and white supremacy, right? Because there's joy, there's love, there's pain, there's celebration, and that happens despite any of the terror, right, that Black people are experiencing. But it's we have to be aware that what they're experiencing is not just in the South, right, and that Jim Crow is national.
I found it fascinating that Madam C.J. Walker had roadblocks to overcome even within her own race. Booker T. Washington, for instance, was someone who she really had to win over, who at first snubbed her.
Yeah. You know, Booker T. Washington really gets a bad rap. He gets a rap in terms of being an accommodationist, of being, you know, a Black leader who, you know, was kowtowing, you know, at the heels of white folks. But when I think about Booker T. Washington, I think about the fact that he was surveying the reality of the experiences of Black folks in the context in which he lived. And for him, thinking about certain types of education, certain types of progress, he created solutions based on that reality. And so he gets a bad rap because people don't understand what he was up against, and they like to compare and contrast him and W.E.B. Du Bois. But, you know, there's this thing about Black history where we try to put Black people in conflict and in binaries, but really there was deep conversation and deep engagement around what are the solutions that will free and liberate Black people where they are right now. And so Booker T. Washington had some interesting solutions that, you know, may or may not work, of course, right now, but that he thought worked in his time, and that he also created educational and economic institutions that trained people up and that gave them skills to be successful in the context in which he lived. So he gets a bad rap, but I think we need to understand him a little bit more deeply.
So Elizabeth and Crystal, if I could just add something to that. So yes, Booker T. Washington, it's complicated. And I do think that's, you know, of the many things that I would have done differently in the Netflix series, I was really unhappy with the way that he was portrayed and their relationship was portrayed because it was complicated. Mm-hmm. And Madam Walker actually had a great deal of admiration for Booker T. Washington because he was an institution builder, because he'd founded Tuskegee. He had figured out how to navigate those those spaces of white power. And she wanted his endorsement. And initially, he kind of brushed her off. And there's an episode where she comes to his convention in 1912 wanting to speak. He won't let her. And finally, she pushes her way to the front. And I won't tell the whole story here, but it is a story where she ultimately gains his respect. And the way that it was portrayed in the film, it's as if he is really a misogynist who just has no respect for her. And that does not fit because his wife was a very educated woman who was the president of the National Association of Colored Women and the dean of girls at Tuskegee. So it really gives him short shrift, you know, but she was not part of his inner circle. But by the time he died in 1915, again, there was a mutual respect. So there was an arc to their relationship. So I wish he had not been portrayed in that way, that there would have been some more nuance to that. And she was one of the things that I think made Madam Walker unique in her community. When people, as Dr. Moten is saying, the people wanted to, you know, put Booker T. Washington on one place and W.B. Du Bois in another, in the same way that there's still this now comparison between King and Malcolm X. But Madam Walker navigated relationships with both of them. She could find what was it that Washington was doing that was for the good of the race, and what was Du Bois doing, so that she supported the work that Du Bois was doing as well. But yes, this is why we need to learn history. This is why this month is so important. But, you know, it's 365 days of learning the nuance.
I thought I'd bring in Carlyle. Talking about, you know, we were talking about historical dramas on television. It'd be great to talk about depictions and dolls. Would you be able to talk about how you incorporate the historical and personal elements? And I mean, this is really elaborate. You got the purple dress. I just dropped her wonderful hair grower on the floor, but it was tucked right here, and there's so much detail. Would love to get your insights and also how you worked with Alelia on this beautiful doll. These are works of art.
I have her here too. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor. You know, I mean, I come from an art school background, an artist designer background. So to be in this, you know, academic context with Dr. Moten and Alelia Bundles and you, Elizabeth, like it's, you know, it's wild. My mom is very proud at this moment, I'm sure. But yeah, like, so, you know, I'm a designer at Mattel. I work on Barbie and I work a lot on our Inspiring Women line, which is a line of dolls celebrating, you know, different historical figures throughout history. And yeah, like when I found out that we were going to partner and do a Barbie of Madam C.J. Walker, like I personally already knew who Madam C.J. Walker was because, you know, I previously designed this line called the Harlem Theater that was inspired by the Harlem Renaissance. And, you know, that was a lot of historical research there. And one of the characters was directly inspired by Madam C.J. Walker. I named her Madam Lavinia, and in the narrative of the Harlem Theater, she was the owner of the club. So she was the boss, very much like Madam C.J. Walker was. So, you know, it was like a full circle moment for me too, to do a doll of the woman that inspired, you know, other dolls that I've done in the past. And yeah, whenever we design a Barbie of someone, you know, we always partner with the foundation or the estate or whatever body kind of, you know, governs the person's license. And sometimes it is like an agency or an estate, or sometimes it's a direct descendant like Alelia. So we have more of a connection and a more of like a direct line to who this person was. And yeah, the process started with me doing my own research and kind of doing a pitch sketch, like a first pass at what I think this Barbie could look like. And then from then we made connection with Alelia. And at the time, this was in 2021, maybe early or mid 21, I think. So for everyone's context, whenever we design Barbies, we design about a year to a year and a half in advance. So it's a long lead time, and that's to figure out production and figure out launch and all these kinds of things. So we are looking ahead. We work really, really far in advance. But yeah, we were working, so this is 21. This was still, you know, the height of the pandemic. So we weren't working in person. Usually what we would do in, you know, non-pandemic times is invite that person over to the design center and we could do all this stuff in person. But instead what we did is we worked through emails. You know, we sent Alelia my initial sketch and she, you know, was instrumental in making this doll like turn out how she did finally, because, you know, she gave us great insight. One, she gave us photos and like complete access to like the Walker family archives. So photos that you can't just find on Google, things that are special, things that are rare, and give you more of an insight and kind of build, you know, who this woman was, who Madam C.J. Walker was, and what she liked to wear, how she liked to present herself and style herself. And then also like key details, like what were Madam C.J. Walker's favorite colors? I remember Lelia said like her stationery was always purple or lavender, right? And so we guarded, you know, okay, we can use those favorite colors, and like turquoises as well too. So there were these details that came directly from Alelia that directly influenced this doll. And yeah, like, you know, working with the team too, like, you know, I'm sitting here as a designer of this doll, but behind this doll is a whole village of face designers, hair designers, sculptors, seamstresses, pattern makers, graphic designers. You know, I worked with a graphic designer named Jaden Day Smith to create the little, the delicate floral of her blouse, and a sculptor named Sean Olmos to create this. Okay, so it's so tiny. Like, this is how tiny her wonderful hair grower is in context to my fingers. But, you know, a sculptor, because, you know, this was Madam C.J. Walker's, I think, iconic product, right? And I was thinking about her, like, in this moment of her life where she's trying to sell this thing. She's trying to get people to believe in it, like going door to door, like literally pounding the pavement to make people love and buy this product. And I thought it was so iconic to her story that I think I wanted to include it with the Barbie, and trying to open it. I'm trying to do a YouTube tutorial of, but this thing opens it has a lid, and like if you can see, like there's a little tiny paint in there to make it, and it's sculpted to look like some kind of hair product. And if you have this doll in person, then you can take it apart, and there's a lid. It's so hard to see in focus, but the top of the lid like recreates the iconic hair grower artwork that featured Madam C.J. Walker herself. And yeah, Alelia, anything else you want to add about the process?
So Carlyle, I'm just, I'm sort of sitting here getting chills because I'm having this memory of when I first had contact with you. And, someone has said to me, a few people have said to me, did you ask Mattel to do the Barbie doll? And I said, oh, no, it doesn't work that way. I got an email, a year and a half or so ago. And, would you like to have a Madam Walker Barbie doll? And I'm like, yeah. And coincidentally, Michelle Duster, who is a good friend of mine, is Ida B. Wells's great granddaughter. And she had just found out that there was going to be an Ida B. Wells doll. So I was like excited for her, but now really excited for me. But of course, you can't say anything. Everything is under wraps. And we had these Zoom calls. I'm so sorry I didn't get to come to the design studio because now that I know that would have been a possibility. But I can still visit, right?
Anytime you're in.
The respect and the collaboration were just ideal for me. And to the point, Carlyle sent drawings. We talked about color. And then one day I got a box of doll heads and hair texture and skin tone. And so we talked about that. And I was so excited when finally I received the mock-up of the doll, because you can see the hair texture is curly. The front actually is very similar to kind of the iconic portrait of Madam Walker. So Carlyle and the team were able to incorporate both of those things. And this idea of representation with dolls is so important. A couple of months ago, my goddaughter, Jillian White, who actually went to Columbia for undergraduate school, has a 2-year-old. And she gave the doll, of course, I gave her, my goddaughter's daughter, a doll. And when she opened it up, Jillian took a video of her, and her daughter, Quinn, looks at the doll, and she said she's kind of curious about it. She's examining it. And her mom says, where is the dolly's hair? And she touches the doll's hair, and then she touches her hair, and then she touches the doll's hair. And for me, that was the moment of affirmation. This is exactly why these dolls are important.
Absolutely. And I think, for me as a designer, I think that's the greatest validation I could have, when someone feels represented or seen by my work. And it's something as simple as specific skin tone or specific nose shape, or even, the combination of style, fashion style or hair texture. And yeah, I think the Barbie brand in the last, I would say, 7 years or so, has really transformed in how much we represent, all different types of people in terms of, different body types, different, facial features. And I think it's so important for kids to see themselves in the toys that they play with. And I think it's, even Alelia, you always said this too when the Madam C.J. Walker Barbie launched, this isn't just for the little girls, this is for the big girls too. And
the boys.
And the boys, it's for everybody. And, I think, you tagged me in some of these things on social media, and I saw them where people were, putting their photos side by side with the Barbie and seeing, their facial features represented, their hair texture. So I think, it's never, if you didn't have it as a kid then, it's never too late, I think, to find a Barbie and, have a happy childhood with a doll that looks like you.
No, I love this conversation, and I wanted to just chime in to kind of think about the opening that these Barbies provide in terms of thinking about history in the past, right? Especially if you think about, the Barbie as a toy, right? But then a young child sees this Barbie, knows that there's this connection to this wonderful African-American entrepreneur, woman in history. And then that kind of opens the door to thinking about, okay, was she the only one? Who else was doing this, right? And so I love thinking about the ways in which we can use kind of pop culture, we can use toys to help expose everyday people to history and to the past, and to be more curious about history in the past. And so my kind of engagement with these dolls was just, in awe, because as a historian, as a former educator, I usually just have text to work with, right? But now you have a different type of object, a different type of something to work with, right? It's not just reading the story in the book. And so I really love hearing the process in terms of how the Barbies are created, and particularly the Madam C.J. Walker Barbie. I was also thinking in terms of kind of the way in which Mattel thinks about their connection to communities, right? Not just connecting to families and organizations of Barbies they're creating, but once a Barbie is out in the world, what is Mattel's next step in terms of connecting with the communities of people who will be touched by these Barbies?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I would say that's more the wheelhouse of, people in our Mattel Foundation, and marketing. But we do, like, for example, like when the Bessie Coleman Barbie just launched the other week, and there's this really great event that happened where it was an American Airlines flight, led by an entire team of Black women pilots. And then everyone that was on that flight received a Bessie Coleman Barbie. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it traced the same route as one of Bessie Coleman's flight routes too. So there are these like events, related around launch that like try to engage the the communities that love these historical figures. And Dr. Moten, I wanted to go back to a point that you made about these dolls as an educational tool, because Barbie is a global brand, right? Barbie's been around since 1959, loved by people all over the world. And I see comments on my social media, and I get DMs and things like that from international collectors outside the US, who, they might buy this doll because they think she's pretty or fits in their collection. And then a lot of them say like, oh, I never knew who Madam C.J. Walker was. Somebody in Italy or somebody in Japan, right? Didn't know who Madam C.J. Walker was. And like, in addition to the doll itself, like, on the back of the box, like it has, like a short biography of the person. And especially if it's international, it's in all different languages as well. So, and I see this from parents also to make comments sometimes, like they buy this for their kid. So, to have something that like brings it to life, brings the person's story to life, beyond just a photo in a textbook or text, something that they can actually physically, play with. I think, it's another way to learn.
Yeah, it's so fantastic.
And we have some photos too. Have we shown them yet?
Yeah,
we can show. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so so this is me at like 3 years old. And my mom had gotten me a black doll for Christmas. And this was right around the time of the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. And coincidentally, my mother knew Mamie Phipps Clark, the wife of Kenneth Clark, and together they had done the very famous Black doll study. So my mother was very intentional about making sure that I had a black doll. But I will tell you that I really, after about 8 years old, I really didn't play with dolls anymore. I went to predominantly white schools, and the commercials that I saw and the book and the dolls that were in the Christmas catalogs were blonde, and I wanted a blonde doll. My mother got me a blonde doll, but I think I felt that she was, uncomfortable. Not that I couldn't have a blonde doll, but she wished that I had wanted both. But fast forward, I became, as an adult, a collector of dolls. And so in the next slide, you see me really excited because the first day that the Barbie launched, I did a little video out in my backyard for Instagram. And then the next picture is me holding the box, because I know a lot of people keep their Barbies in the box, but I want to encourage them to take their Barbies out of the box. So you'll see that next. And then the next picture is kind of an illustration of how I started my collection. I began to buy dolls at a Black Dolls show maybe 30 or 35 years ago, but then I started collecting Black Santa Clauses and Black elves. And then in addition, the next slide shows my sort of, not, this is only a small part of my Black Santa Claus collection. And then next is angels. There's so many people who make beautiful angels. And then the next slide is just one of the many Madam Walker dolls. And then we can go to the next slide, which is another Madam Walker doll that someone made. This is actually a 3-foot tall doll made by a wonderful woman who's 85, Nellie Hayes, who lives in Chicago. And then this is another Madam Walker doll complete with her fur. And then the next is another doll. So lots of people will just send me these dolls. And then going next is yet another one. You know, people are so creative in how they portray her. And then one more I think we have, and this is back to me with my cousins and our dolls. So we can, I just want we can take the photos down, but just to show you that representation is so important. And I will say that I have dolls of various ethnicities. I'm just showing you my Black dolls, but as a kid, you want to be able to have kids have all of their friends who are sitting there on the side of their bed.
Oh, and we also have photos provided by Carlyle as well. One thing that I ran across in my research was Kitty Black Perkins as well. So if you could talk about her being the first Black designer at Barbie, and also her design of the first Black Barbie.
Yeah, sure. So what everyone's seeing on the screen now is my sketch of the Maya Angelou Barbie, which came out in 2021 as part of our Inspiring Women series. And for this Barbie, we worked directly with her son. Oh my gosh, his name is escaping me now. I think it's Guy Angelou. Her son and his wife. And this was in 2020, so it was very surreal because we had a phone call conversation with him. And his voice was exactly like his mom's. Oh. It was the same depth and texture and resonance. And it was just a phone call. I wasn't seeing him, what he looked like. So it was very surreal because it was 2020, middle of the pandemic, and I'm at home working and talking to, Maya Angelou's son. And, I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings when I was in high school too. So this was definitely an honor to design. And he was very instrumental in providing insight into his mom. He really wanted the face to look like her. So we sculpted a face, especially for this Barbie, with all the details, especially the iconic gap in between her teeth. And yeah, I wanted to recreate Maya around the time of the launch of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So you can kind of see this is a photo of her like in the 70s and, kind of what she would wear. Because, she has iconic moments throughout her career, of course, like the inauguration speech is one that I was also looking at. But I think, this was a time that I wanted to capture. And all of the colors were inspired by the original cover of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So these warm oranges and peaches and yellows and things like that. And yeah, one thing too is that when we photograph these dolls, we have such an amazing Mattel photography team and set building team where they build, a set that brings this person to life. And the concept behind this set was, her at home, maybe giving an interview or something in the comfort of her own home about I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So this was definitely a great doll to work on. And, I think, there's also, I think, allyship in being a designer on these dolls, because, you know, obviously, like, I'm designing dolls for people who aren't myself all the time, right? So I'm designing dolls, you know, I'm obviously not a Black woman, I'm not a child anymore. So I'm always trying to be empathetic and thinking about, like, the person that receives this doll, how would I like them to feel? What details in this doll can I put that they would react to, respond to, that hopefully they can feel, you know, connected and represented by this doll. So that's something that I'm always thinking about in any doll that I design, really, like whether it's, you know, a $5 Barbie or a $100 one for collectors, like how can I put details that make someone feel connected to this doll? Oh, and here's my sketch of Bessie Coleman, which just launched the end of last month into this month, especially for Black History Month this year. And yeah, we worked with her niece, Gigi Coleman. And yeah, like in my research, there weren't that many photos of her too, and a lot of them are black and white. But this photo, this iconic, beautiful portrait of her with her big smile and her, you know, pilot's cap that has her initials B and C on it. So if you look at the Barbie, you know, I worked with our sculpting team to especially sculpt little B and C and make sure that it was painted in gold, similar to how it might have been on the real one. So you always want to capture too, like the spirit of the person too. Like if they are serious, I would choose a, you know, a closed mouth face sculpt. But you know, that smile of Bessie was so big and warm, so I wanted to use a face sculpt that represented that. And yeah, as you can see here too, like our Mattel photography team really brings this to life. You know, building a set, you know, a era appropriate plane that she can pose on. You know, I'm sure you all know that she was, you know, very much a show pilot and did crazy stunts and things in the air too. So I think this kind of shows her her showmanship, like the spirit of showmanship in this photo. And also, yeah, we have oh, sorry, I mean, going back to the other slide about our packaging designers too, like they you know, we work with, you know, we all work together, and they're putting a background that kind of represents the person as well too. So like in the Madam C.J. Walker packaging, you know, the background is Villa Loaro, you know, Madam C.J. Walker's estate too. So any chance we get, we try to have storytelling to tell who this person was and, you know, bring that to life. Yeah. So this was a photo, of course, Alilian, myself and marketing team, we all worked together to create a set that was like a hair salon, you know, in the early 1900s, what it might have looked like. Yeah, for Madam C.J. Walker. And you can see in the background, someone's getting their hair done. And then this photo, yeah, I was taking the iconic portrait of Madam C.J. Walker and putting it next to, you know, the same angle of Barbie. So you can really see the comparison between the two and the similarities, and, you know, photos of the wonderful hair grower, how that would look like in teeny tiny Barbie scale. Like, I think it's pretty cool that like this little piece of history can fit on the tip of your finger in terms of Barbie scale. I think it's really fun. And I think we always try to include these accessory pieces beyond the doll herself, accessory pieces that also tell the story too.
And can you also talk about Kitty Black Perkins as well?
Yeah, sure. So Kitty Black Perkins was a designer at Mattel throughout the 70s and 80s, I think into the 90s as well. And I mean, she is in the Barbie community. So there's a Barbie collecting community. There's collectors all over the world. There's conventions. You know, she is iconic. She's Kitty Black Perkins, right? I mean, her resume of dolls that she's designed so many dolls, like a lot of celebrity dolls like MC Hammer and Brandy, of course. But I think one big iconic Barbie that she designed was Black Barbie in 1980. So what was significant about this doll is that this is the first time Barbie herself was Black. Because previously in Mattel's history, there were friends like Christy and Francie, and even celeb partnerships like Diane Carroll as Nurse Julia previously. But this is the first time where Barbie herself, not a side character, was Black. And can we pull up those Is it possible to pull up those photos, Liz?
Oh, I sent it a little earlier.
Okay, well, if not, but yeah, Kitty Black Perkins, she was an iconic designer for Barbie in Mattel's history.
And let me see, I'll put in the chat, and then I'm also going to pivot a little bit. My computer, unfortunately, is a little slow. Yeah, I'll put in the chat a little later. But returning to, I wanted to ask Dr. Moten about the scholarship of African-American women. Can you talk about the Association of Black Women Historians? The late Rosalind Terborg Penn, one of the late founders, challenged what we've been taught in school, that the women's suffrage movement was, that the women's suffrage movement was led by white women, and that Black women were also involved in the fight, but faced major discrimination by those white women on whose side they were fighting. Is it a hot field right now?
I am biased about that topic. Black women's history is always important and always relevant, right? Because we're always, and I include myself in that as well, we're always contributing to causes for freedom and justice and for equality. And so in terms of thinking about, though, a particular popularity around Black women's history, what I will say is that there is an interest in Black women's history, more of a broader public interest in Black women's history. But there have always been Black women historians, Black scholars who have called for an examination of the contributions of Black women to this nation. And so with the Association of Black Women Historians, and particularly thinking about the late Terborg Penn's contributions, she was one of the folks who pushed the field, the historical field, to really consider Black women's contributions as legitimate scholarship, as legitimate area to be studied. And so thinking about the Association of Black Women Historians, right, it's an organization committed, right, to making sure that Black women are included in historical narratives, right, and thinking about, right, how when you include the experiences of Black women, that can change a narrative. And so, again, I'm biased in terms of whether it's a hot field right now, but the thought around it is that this organization has been one that has always advocated for the study of Black women's lives and experiences. And I will say, what I will say about Alilia's book is that it was an earlier book that centered Black women's history, right? It was an earlier book that allowed us to really focus on and consider, again, not just Madam C.J. Walker's story, but the context in which she lived. And so that book was so important for our field, right? And especially because it's for an everyday audience. It's not just supposed to be in the ivory tower, but anyone can read about and access the story of Madam C.J. Walker through Alilia's great book. And so it was a great contribution to the field of Black women's studies and Black women's history.
So Dr. Moten, thank you so much. And, this is a perfect full circle for me, because Dr. Terborg Penn and the Association of Black Women Historians were really quite welcoming to me as someone who was not in the academy, but as a journalist. But I was one of the early members, and would go to the conferences during Asala and got to become friends with people. And they really were. I mean, there had been a few Black women PhDs in history before then, but during the early 1970s, with people like Nell Irvin Painter and Darlene Clark Hine and others, they really put a stake in the ground to legitimize the study of Black women's history. And this was a time when women's history, Black history departments were being created, but when they were being resisted by the academies, telling people, oh, these topics are not very important. Kathy Pice's book, Hope in a Jar, really examined women and cosmetics and women and fashion. And it's women who have carved out a space to say we can examine any topic and put a scholarly lens on it and evaluate it and critique it. I mean, I remember applying for a National Endowment for the Humanities fellowship many, many years ago. And one of the people who was judging it, I was able to FOIA their comments. And they said, well, Madam Walker's not really an important topic. It's not really worth doing. But over these last 50 years, we now know that whether it's dolls, whether it's play, whether it's fashion, whether it's hair, whatever, that there is a way to put a scholarly lens on it.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And, it was those early contributions of those folks who, were many times, the lone voice in their academic departments, the only people studying Black women's history, on whose shoulders I stand, right? The fact that I can write an entire book on Black women's economic justice activism in a very particular place is only because of Darlene Clark Hine and Deborah Gray White, right? Who said, okay, we have to do this. This is important. This is worth scholarly, sustained focus.
I'll be looking for the book on Kitty Black Perkins and Carlyle.
Yes. Yes.
Yesterday, James Grossman, the executive director of the American Historical Association, and Jeremy Young, the senior manager of free expression and education at PEN America, wrote in a joint piece that everything has a history, including race, gender, and society, and that educators prohibited from teaching history with professional integrity cannot provide students the resources they need to become responsible citizens in a democratic society. How do you see your role as a historian and curator today? Are historians being thrust into an unwitting role of activist?
Oh, that's a deep question, Elizabeth. My role as a historian has always been one where, I have a job to do. Because history in the past shapes who we are today, and it shapes where we can go in the future. And so, I like to think of activism and activists with, the little a, right? Everyone can be, and everyone can take on the role of an activist. And so I think historians' role, not only to just tell stories about the past, but also to think about the methods for doing history, considering primary sources, considering multiple vantage points, looking and questioning what you see in a historical record. That is it. Those are important tools for everyone to be aware of. And so, I think historians have a real crucial role to play in American society, especially as we think about the role of democracy and how our democracy at once right now is being questioned, right? And it really comes down to the point that many people don't know our history, don't know the past, don't know the ways in which decisions that were made, prior to us are shaping us right now. And so I think historians, we have a moral mandate to make sure that everyone has access to the understanding and knowledge of the past, right, that will help us make informed decisions about who we are, about what we stand for, in order to shape the world that we all live in. And so that's why I think thinking about, these Barbies, right, they may seem just trivial, right, but they're so important because, again, they provide an opportunity to open a door, right? To open a door to a past, to a history, to a story, to a narrative, to an interpretation that someone might not have been exposed to in their formal or traditional school, right? And so with that opening, where can they go from there? And so that's why I think thinking about this, these Barbies, and thinking about what we can learn from them is so very important. And then everyone can be a historian. Everyone can use the tools of history to understand how we got to where we are and to craft a better future where all of us can be equal and full citizens.
The Barbies are this especially inspiring women series, but I also have Tina Turner who's in a different series. I've now become obsessed with every new Barbie.
Yes.
But in many ways, they are history, but they are biography. And biography was that's what I do every day. But it's how I first really began to be, to sort of how history resonated with me. It was through people. And I, wouldn't have been able to tell you that when I was in first grade and reading the biography series. But when I imagine, kids now, as they have these dolls, if they have an Ida B. Wells doll and a Madam Walker doll, and Madam Walker and Ida B. knew each other. So just imagine if they had them talking to each other. But there's so many other dolls in the series where there can be dialogue. It can be cross-generational. It can be cross centuries, but you begin to, through play acting, which we know is very important in how children see themselves, what they aspire to, all of those things, it's very important. So even if somebody is trying to ban books, kids will still find it on TikTok. They will still find it on Instagram. They will still have it on the shelf with their, and on the side of their bed in their playroom, with Barbies and with these stories that they can learn themselves.
Dr. Moten and Alelia, thank you so much for, both of what you said, because it kind of made me emotional about, the work that I do, that we all do at Mattel and on Barbie to create these dolls as tools and entryways into education, into the past. But, it's funny that you bring up, someone a little more modern like Tina Turner. The Barbies that we do of real people, sometimes they're making history right now. Like the first, we did a Barbie of Laverne Cox that was released last year. So the first Barbie of a transgender person ever. That was really an emotional process too. And like such an honor to be a part of that project and to design that Barbie. So I think it's both. It's, looking back at history, making sure we don't repeat the bad parts of it, and also making history now and looking into the future of, what other people can we honor? Who else, can, is an icon to us in our current society.
With regard to the debate on schools when it comes to Black studies and U.S. history, are museums and dolls finding themselves in the crosshairs of this debate?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because, you think about, museums, and you think about, other historic institutions or other history-making places, right? These are the places that people go, once they're finished with school. Like you go into a museum, this is how you learn, right? Or one of the institutions of learning outside of the educational institution. And so museums are increasingly finding themselves, in the crosshairs of these political debates around what should and what shouldn't be taught, because people are also looking to these museums and other cultural institutions to provide guidance and to provide and to be that trusted space, right, within these very political debates. But again, I think, going back to Barbie, that's why these types of outputs become so important, right? Because although I don't think that anything is ever politically neutral, in some ways, again, we see the possibility that a toy can have, right, in terms of being able to provide a perspective on the past and on our present, right, that perhaps a more politically mobilized other institution, people might not be able to go there with that, right? But you have this opportunity with these dolls, and we're really in a very politically polarized moment right now. And so again, thinking about the choices that Mattel is making in terms of lifting up the people who it's choosing to lift up, even that's a political statement, right? Especially when we think about the racism, the homophobia, the transphobia, right, that people are living with, right? And so for Mattel to say, hey, we're going to have this Barbie doll, a Laverne Cox Barbie doll. We're going to have Maya Angelou in a headscarf. We're going to have Madam C.J. Walker with texturized hair, right? In these very political moments where we're having to really fight for representation and fight for people to be able to see themselves. And so museums is one terrain where that's happening. But again, there are other terrains as well. And again, I think it's our responsibility, right, to use our platforms to create more expansive opportunities for everyone.
So now's the time for the Q&A, and I'll just jump right into it. We have about 25 minutes and a lot of people who have questions. from Tristan Espinoza, college class of 25, current college student. What does Barbie mean to you? How can you either change that notion or make it better for the next generation?
Alili, do you want to go first?
Well, I will just say, as I said, I did not play with Barbies. The first Barbie I think was 1959, and I stopped playing with dolls in 1960. So I never was a Barbie. I never played with Barbie, but and I would say that the evolution of Barbie is absolutely fascinating. Obviously, it's well known, the critique of the body shape and those kinds of things. I mean, that's not everyone knows that, but it is very interesting to see in the 21st century how what used to be kind of a Barbie who was a nurse or who was a secretary, then became an astronaut, then became a doctor. And then the Addie series, which is not Addie, but the American Girl series, which is part of Mattel's wheelhouse. How this notion of play and representation is there. I actually, a couple of people said to me, well, why isn't the Madam Walker doll, more heavy set? Because their image of her is seeing Octavia Spencer play the role or seeing an older picture. But Madam Walker actually was, kind of had a waistline and hips in her younger years. And so that didn't bother me, but I know that people are sometimes concerned about body shape, or her face wasn't exactly the way, it wasn't sculpted exactly the way. So I know that, people have their own critiques, but I was very happy with the doll because it referenced her hair, it referenced her clothing. I liked the fact I wanted it to be, to have some whimsy to it, because I wanted it to be fashion forward. I mean, it could have been a much older version of her, but I wanted it to be something that a young person, that a child would look at and be attracted to.
We have another question by Neka Gigi, class of 23, graduating this year. Dolls play such an instrumental role in how children play and learn about themselves in the classroom. Is there any opportunities to integrate these dolls with learning opportunities in traditional and non-traditional classrooms?
I already have friends who are doing that. A friend of mine sent me a picture the other day where she has my children's book and the doll, and she's using it. So that's happening. Just do it.
And we have a question from Claudia Holland. For Carlyle, how do you decide who gets mass produced and who is one of a kind?
So, we work with our marketing and our partnerships team, and it's really their wheelhouse to go out and find people like Alelia or other estates and foundations to work with us, right? Because, we always want it to be a partnership between whoever owns the rights to the person's likeness. So a lot of times too, us as designers will get together and have brainstorms and create lists of who are our dream collaborators. Who do we think could fit into our Inspiring Women series? Who do we think is, a modern pop star or modern actress that we could try to pursue because we feel like they would make a really great Barbie? So we filter those lists and our dreams to our marketing partners and our partnership partners, and they go after them. And, find a contact. And, sometimes people don't want a Barbie of themselves. And, sometimes the most obvious ones that we all think like, duh, this person should have a Barbie. For some reason, it's not the right time also. So timing is also a big thing because, maybe they're not in like a cycle of publicity or something. Maybe we have to wait a couple of years or something. So, it just depends on the partnership between us and whoever owns the rights and likenesses of the people we want to honor.
We have a question from an attendee. What do you recommend to audience members who may want to rally together in collective courage to oppose the watering down of AP African American Studies?
Dr. Moten, I know you have something to say, but the couple of things I would say: go to your school board meeting, read everything. You know, if you have to have a Google alert on AP history, on critical race theory, you know, push on woke, push back on these definitions that are coming from people who really are only weaponizing the definition, but stay informed. I read numerous articles every day so that I know what's going on. It's obviously going to be a part of the next presidential cycle, but go to school board meetings, pay attention to what's happening in your legislature, you know, pushbacks, write to your congressman. You've got to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would also suggest going directly to the advanced placement website and learning exactly what is proposed for being in the course, so that you are armed with the correct information about what the course is, what its mission and goals are, and what students will get from it. And so armed with that information, then I would, you know, support all of the organizing and efforts that Lilia just mentioned.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I would say is that there is so much information available. It's in books, it's in libraries, but it's on the internet. There's so many organizations that are doing the work, that provide alternative educational opportunities for children. Nobody can hide this history successfully because it is out there.
That's right.
I also followed the American Historical Association more recently, and also we're following the Association of Black Women Historians. From Deborah, the law school class of '95. Do dolls have different styles and or textures of hair? I'm asking this because I am blind and have not seen a Barbie doll in 45 years.
Yeah, absolutely. We have all different kinds of textures of hair, like the Madam C.J. Walker Barbie, you know, is actually, you know, very tactical. You can feel the curls, you can feel the twist that goes around like kind of a headband. We also have, you know, part of the trick to getting the hair textures into dolls is like, how can we manufacture it? Do we have a vendor that creates this fiber, you know, at a mass manufacturing, you know, budget and costs, right? That's all kind of the nitty gritty of being a designer. But we also have Barbies with, if you excuse me for 1 second, like this is a Barbie I designed. This was a holiday Barbie in 2021, and she has twists. So this is something that you can feel as well and swing around. So yeah, there's all different Barbies with different textures. We have, you know, Afro textured hair too in different curl tightnesses. Of course, we have straight, waves, crimps if we're going for an 80s vibe. All of this is available to us, a designer, and you know, it's about us being choiceful about, you know, the purpose of this doll, the strategy of this doll, and yeah, if this doll needs twists or needs crimps, then that's what we try to put in it.
Another question for you, Carlyle, from Lindsay. EP team with the Lawyers Committee. How does the Barbie team decide what dolls to give new face sculpts in the Inspiring Women line or other collector lines?
That's a good question. Yeah, it really depends on, you know, sometimes the person that we're working with, you know, directly requests it. Like, you know, when we did Maya Angelou, her son, we tried with existing face sculpts that looked similar, but he still felt like, oh, that's still not my mother, right? And that's such an emotional and sentimental connection, right? So you want to honor that if you're working with that person. Other times, you know, we have over Barbies, you know, Barbie's been around since 1959. We have sculpts spanning the decades, right? We have so many different sculpts. And so we always try, you know, we can always find one that looks very, very close. And then our face paint designers and face paint artists can do magic with, you know, placement of eyebrows, you know, proportions of the eyes. Are they closer together? Are they further apart? You know, you can paint lips thinner, fuller, all, and like changing the skin tone of the sculpts too. All of these kind of design elements can create a Barbie that looks like a real person.
And a question from Marie. As a Black toy designer herself, I would love, she wrote, I would love to have the three of you talk about the importance of having BIPOC creatives being a part of this journey and the need to expose young people to this as a career. And also, if I could add, to what extent are historians becoming more part of the dramatization of like the Netflix series?
I think, myself, I'm Asian American, I'm Filipino American, I'm from LA, I'm queer, I'm fat, all these things, right? And, I think it's a reason why I choose to be active on social media and put myself out there, right? Of course, you get hate, you get awful people in your DMs saying awful things. But part of that, the reason why I choose to do that is so that other people can see, okay, there's, a guy of color, he's queer, he's fat, he's designing dolls and Barbie and making art with the intention to represent as many people as possible and represent other people. I've gotten so many amazing DMs and sweet things from, fellow Filipinos who didn't realize that there's a Filipino designer designing Barbies. So I think it is really important too, to know that the intention behind these dolls is real and it comes from lived experience too. Lived experience in terms of, myself and the friends that I have and, being in LA and, having a diverse set of friends. I think it is important. And I think, it's about visibility too. And, allowing people to see you doing your thing.
Yeah, and to the point around, historians being called on to be consultants for, film and media. I mean, my thought is that we need way more consultations, right? There are certain, films and media that, some historians have been asked to consult and to provide critical research on and around, and I've been asked to do that. But we need way more opportunities to consult. But then beyond being asked to consult, we actually need these film studios to actually take our recommendations, right? And so not just to say, hey, I brought on this, this important historian who has spent, decades studying this really specific thing, just to ignore everything that historian has said. And so I think it's important that we are brought on as consultants and that our recommendations are taken into consideration. And I think more and more that is happening, but that, has not always been the case.
Yeah, I learned so many lessons in this process. And I was, my book was optioned for the Netflix series, and one would have thought that my expertise would have been really welcomed. But I think that historically, the default position for a Hollywood studio is throw the book over the fence and go away. But it has changed. Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar, president of the Association of Black Women Historians, was a consultant on the series that was on Gilded Age.
Gilded Age, right.
And she was taken very seriously. She's part of a group called History Studio, which is historians who are contracted to work with movies. But it had, and when Self-Made came out, the Association of Black Women Historians hosted a roundtable with Noliwe Rooks and Tiffany Gill and Tyrone McKinley Freeman with Erica moderating, where they talked about why it is important to have historians in the room, in the writer's room. And so if there is, one of my key takeaways from that experience is that the next project that I am working on, I will be in the writer's room. I am trying to encourage other people I know who have connections to famous people or who are experts on a particular field, to really, assert themselves to be involved. And it makes the project better when you, especially with these stories that are being told about women and people of color that are making it to the screen for the first time. Abraham Lincoln's been on the screen 1,000 times. Our stories are just now being told. And so while there has to be, some creative license, and you have to make up scenes and dialogue and conflate characters and events, I don't like it when it veers from the core character of the original person, because we need to set a baseline for that. No, it's not a documentary, as the showrunners tried to remind me more than I wanted to hear from them, especially because I'd had a 30-year career in television news. But it is a marker for these historical figures.
We have a question from Cassandra, class of 13. Which do you think comes first, Barbie's evolution or the evolution of the ideal woman, specifically in terms of Blackness, race, politics?
Ooh, I mean, I think, Barbie, ever since her inception in 1959, has always been a reflection of culture and society. So I think as culture changes, Barbie is changing, right? And because you can't reflect something that's not there. So as society changes, Barbie changes. And, I think, sometimes people crystallize their idea of Barbie at a certain point in their life, like when they were a kid, and then, people grow out of Barbie and toys and dolls, so they never really think about her again. So they think about her just as she was as a kid. But, as we've all talked about in the last hour, like Barbie has evolved so much in her, 60 plus year existence. So, and I think Barbie will continue to do that as society continues to evolve and change and grow. Barbie will reflect that.
And while we're talking specifically about Barbie, because of the Madam Walker Barbie and the Barbie doll line, Mattel and other doll makers also there's an amazing array. I've learned how strong the Barbie community is, but just on social media with the launch of the Madam Walker Barbie, I was exposed to literally hundreds of dolls that I did not know about. But in particular with Mattel, the American Girl series, Addie was the first Black character, but now there's Claudie, who's a new character. But there are other characters, and this is for a younger audience than the Barbies. Barbies, I think, are really kind of collectibles as much as they are something to be played with. But I think that that series, that American Girl series, is really directed to help little girls fantasize, and I always have to say, and little boys too, but to help children fantasize, to aspire to. And those are, body shapes and dolls and faces that look like the audience that they are directed towards. I don't know, Carlyle, do you have any thoughts about American Girl and how that's the audience?
I don't work on American Girl. That's a whole other team and department and location too. They're actually located in Middleton, Wisconsin too. They're not based out of LA. But yeah, I totally agree with you that what American Girl does so well is that it takes these moments in history, these periods in history, and makes them understandable for children through a specific character that they can relate to. So it takes, difficult, crazy things that are going on, like war and racism and things. And how does this kid, this child, experience that? And how does, the child playing with the doll, with that character, like, how can they understand it through the lens of a kid?
We have a question from Felicia. I am curious if Ms. Aurelia Bundles knows what color Madam C.J. Walker's famous car color was.
That was a great question. All the cars were Black then. There might have been a little bit of maroon. I think we might have talked about that at some point. But the cars were Black. Her cars were Black. As far as I know, all the photos were Black and white.
We have something from Stephanie, class of 22. What has been the most challenging aspect of being a Black woman in some of the same spaces we discussed today?
Dr. Moten?
Oh, that's a tough question. And I think sometimes understanding and being the only Black woman has been difficult. Being in spaces where the pressure is so high because you're either the only one or you're the first one. And so there's this hyper both invisibility and visibility that you have to navigate that really becomes difficult.
But I will go back to your comments about this sort of the complexity of it, that you're, first you're coming with your own joy and identity and the things that the confidence that you have, the things that you have accomplished, and then you are in a setting, and sometimes you're in a setting where there's receptivity to your brilliance, and sometimes you are in a setting where no matter what you say, you are assumed not to know what you were talking about. But that is in my 70 years, all of those things have happened.
And our final question from Jane, college class of '88. What is the impact of the Misty Copeland doll?
So that was actually designed by my boss, Linda Chalmers-Shawn. She worked directly with Misty Copeland. And I think the impact of the doll is, it's really just amplifying Misty's impact herself, right? Because, to be a Black ballerina and, to perform at the levels and with the visibility that she did. And I think too, having a doll of her also relates her to kids more. And, like we've talked about too, now people will learn about who Misty Copeland is, learn about the history that she's made. Actually, now that I think about it, so Misty, I did design a Barbie of Misty. We did two kind of. So, because she played a ballerina in The Nutcracker in the Four Realms. She played the ballerina of the realms. So I designed that doll too, but that was her in costume, her as a character, not her as herself. So yeah, she has two Barbies of her, now that I think about it.
Do any of you want to sum up and have final thoughts?
I can go first. I just want to say thank you to everyone watching, to Dr. Moten, to Liz, to Alelia. It really is an honor to be a part of this forum and on this panel, and to talk about Barbie and design in this kind of context, in the context of representation and history, and the future too, what the future could look like. So thank you all so much. I'm really honored.
Yeah, and I would just like to leave on a final word of let this be an opening, let this be an introduction, but that continue the journey toward educating yourself about not only Black women's history, but Black folks' contributions, right, to making and creating the just world that we all want to live in.
Yeah, and just what an honor to be with all of you. It is a joy for me to tell Madam Walker's story, because it inspires people. And whether it's a book or whether it's a movie or whether it's a Barbie doll, I just love knowing that she is out there, and just grateful to everybody who is interested. And Elizabeth, to you for reaching out. I think that, we need to take this show on the road, folks.
Yes, we all have our dolls.
I'm so grateful to all of you, Alelia Bundles, Dr. Crystal Moten, and Carlyle Nuera, for being a part of this incredible conversation. It's a real honor. Like I said, I first reached out to Alelia around Labor Day, so I'm just so excited to have had this talk. Also, many thanks to the Director of Columbia College Alumni Relations, Fanny Jarrett Abdulali, her team, and the President of Columbia College Women, Margaret Robinson. Thank you to Jason and Michael at Kelson Productions for making this Zoom production so smooth. Thank you all for tuning in from all the places you are. And please follow Alelia, Crystal, and Carlyle, whether through their websites, Twitter, or Instagram. And follow Columbia College Women to check out our events. Have a good evening or a good day wherever you are, and keep well. Bye.